Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join our demo webinar series, second webinar today, that focuses on security reporting. But before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. This webinar is being recorded, and before, just again, let people know again that this is being recorded, and the recording will be shared with all registrants and attendees after the webinar is completed. Additionally, this recording will also be available on our website under the resources section. Just a note, if you do have any questions for us based on the content that we've shared today or anything else about the Nagomi platform, feel free to use Zoom webinars Q&A functionality, or feel free to follow up with us directly after the webinar is completed. And just note, we shall be answering all the questions after the demo part completes and during the Q&A section. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started on this webinar. Security teams today do face a very tough reality, and it is a reality, and it is really tough. Didn't mean to kind of say it in that way, but the main challenge that ends up happening is that they face a lot of they ingest and have to analyze a lot of data with no way to clearly prove if any of the things that they're doing are actually making a significant impact, and they cannot even prove if any of the changes, if they're even able to track, can actually make a significant difference to the business. The problem isn't the data, it's turning that data into clarity and influence. And that's what our webinar today focuses on. We're going to show how Nagomi can help align security and business teams by translating complex data into actionable insights. Our presenters today, we are excited to be a presenters today. I'm Kaustubh Jagtap, KJ. I'm the manager of technical marketing here at Nagomi Security, and I'm joined by Ryan Matthews, our amazing solutions architect. With that being said, let's go ahead and get started. As I mentioned before, there is a huge challenge that is facing security teams today. One of the things that we, Nagomi, constantly hear from the field is how much time reporting takes. And reporting should be a part of what the security teams do, but essentially it takes up 30 to 50% of weekly time for some of the analysts. And it's this time, this critical time is spent not fixing issues or improving controls that are deployed, but just basically pulling data through various spreadsheets and trying to make the numbers line up and trying to make sense of them. And it's not just the time, it's just the chaos, because A, you have a lot of data, and B, you need to actually make people understand that data. Additionally, other key challenges include teams are dealing with 40 plus, on an average, 40 plus deployed security controls, each with its own dashboard, its own metrics, and its own definition of what's good, what's not good, and how they communicate that data. So teams at the end are basically left trying to piece together a narrative from disconnected systems that may or may not have been designed to work together. And at the end, you end up with this hodgepodge of things that you're trying to explain your effectiveness and your overall posture with, but sometimes, or majority of the times, it might just fall flat. And even when teams are able to make a sense of this data by getting all this data to work together, they can't really communicate, is this really effective? Are our controls really working? Whatever are we doing, is that really effective? They may or may not even be able to answer a simple question, are we really secure? This is why precisely Nagomi helps, or this is why we built Nagomi, to automate and improve security reporting, essentially providing you, the user, with the program performance dashboard that cuts through the noise and answers the real question, is our program working the way it is supposed to? Again, and kind of those were some of the numerical challenges statistically that we were talking about, but in reality, security leaders are facing this pressure. Those were, I would say, more practitioner kind of challenges. Security leaders are facing similar but slightly elevated challenges. They face a slight different variation of that. They are getting pressure from everywhere. They're getting pressure from their board, from their CEO, CIO, and even the other people under them saying that, I don't know if this tool is working, or hey, is this investment worth the ROI? And high profile breaches that have been in the news recently, boards and executives end up asking even more tougher questions. And it's because they finally understand that this can potentially impact our organization and our bottom line. And they have now begun to understand the cyber risk isn't just an IT problem anymore, that they'll be like, hey, the firewall didn't work. It's not an IT problem anymore, but it's now become a more of a serious business issue. At the same time, government and regulatory authorities all across the world are introducing new regulations that are getting stricter. But at the same time, threats are evolving even more faster. And to gain real-time insight is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity. And at the end of the day, one of CISO's primary functions is, how do I effectively manage my budget, and how do I prove that my investments are showing the right ROI that they're supposed to? Because they're expected to not just defend the organization, but prove that each and every tool in their arsenal is doing what it's supposed to. With all this being said, they come up against sky high expectations from the executives and boards, and the stakes are really real, because a simple breach can potentially affect your bottom line. It can affect your reputation, cause monetary and reputational damage, but at the same time can cause you to lose your job. And the margin of error is minimal. So what can a CISO do? They have to figure out how best to use it. And this is precisely where Nagomi comes in. Nagomi has a proactive defense platform that connects to your existing tools, including everything that you see here and much more, through secure read-only APIs. And we pull in information that includes your assets, your control coverage, tool effectiveness. We correlate all this information and give you a complete contextualized view of your environment without even lifting a finger. So it's all read-only APIs. We pull that information in. And then we go beyond just showing you this information, these gaps. We then take all this information and layer on a level of threat intelligence and MITRE ATT&CK framework and other regulatory frameworks to prioritize your most critical TTPs and exploitable vulnerabilities based on your unique business context. Using this threat intelligence and other frameworks, we can correlate everything, not just your threat-related gaps, but your misconfigurations, controls, control effectiveness, so that your team knows where to exactly focus so that they can get the most out of their tools. And finally, the thing that today's webinar is going to focus on is being able to effectively communicate the impact of your organization to multiple stakeholders. And this is where we help you communicate impact of your program. Our dashboards turn this technical data that we've gathered in the first couple of steps into executive-ready insights that show how your security investments are reducing risks and aligning with your business goals. Now let's go ahead and I'll switch over to Ryan, who will actually show you all this awesomeness in a demo. Over to you, Ryan.
Thank you very much. Let me get my screen shared out and we will be good to go. So I'm going to walk through a few things in the demo this afternoon. Number one, I'm going to talk you through what Nagomi is, how we collect the data from you, and what we can do once we have it. Number two, I'm going to show you some of the out-of-the-box reporting, the things you get basically for free just by giving us access to your tools. And then we'll go through some customized dashboards, the kinds of things that you can build very easily that are going to solve for a lot of the problems that KJ talked about earlier. And we'll then pivot from there and talk a little bit about so what, right? I talk all the time about people don't buy more visibility, they buy the ability to take action on what they see. And so we'll walk you through the kinds of things that you can do with Nagomi to turn that visibility into action and unlock more value from the tools you already have. So as we get started, you can see in this demo environment here, I've got a bunch of different tools connected. This is actually a real customer whose data has been anonymized. We connect to these tools using read-only APIs, and we ingest a bunch of data from those, things like the assets you're protecting, whether those are servers, workstations, or user accounts, as well as the policies in those tools that are protecting those assets. As we ingest that data, we normalize it and we correlate it together to build a true, complete, unique inventory of all of your assets. And what you can see as a result of that is on the right here in this coverage section. We're able to show exactly how many Windows workstations this particular environment has, but no single tool knows about all of those workstations. And so we're getting the benefit of this deduplication correlation where we can glue the data together and understand what does a total unique inventory look like. But asset inventory solutions have been around for quite a while. We need to be able to do something more with this data. And that's where some of our out-of-the-box reporting comes in. So here you can see we can use what we call labels, which is essentially metadata from your environment. Think department tags in Active Directory, country tags in Active Directory, or maybe policy names or groups or other tags from, say, CrowdStrike. We can use that metadata to define logical segments of your business. Here you can see we've got some HR, IT, and finance groups that we're looking at. This allows us to internally benchmark these groups against each other. How many user accounts are there? How many workstations are there? And how are they doing over the past 60 days? We can also view the data from other lenses, though. How is my vulnerability management program doing versus network security and security awareness? Right? We track all of the tools and how they contribute to various IT security related programs and how those are performing. We also track in the threat context how you're doing against risks you care about. So Nagomi catalogs the common MITRE tactics and techniques used by ransomware adversaries or phishing adversaries to understand what are the kinds of things they're going to do against you. And we link your controls to that so that we can show you how you're doing against those key risks based on how you're actually configured. But beyond the out-of-the-box reporting, where it gets super interesting is with custom dashboards. So let's explore the dashboards view and take a look at a couple of options. So I built a dashboard for this webinar for our fictitious customer, Acme Incorporated. And you can see this one is called Executive View. And one of the things that KJ talked about is the ability to kind of pull up metrics that are relevant at an executive level, but not at an operational level. And here you can see we've got a bunch of data here, but before I go into that, I want to highlight two things. One thing that we hear consistently from executives is that it's important that the way you measure stays the same and that the data looks and feels the same over time, that the measurement is consistent. And Nagomi does that. We're able to show the same data in the same format, measured exactly the same way, week after week, month after month, quarter after quarter. The other thing that we do that's powerful from an executive level is we allow you to align to the business. So I can change this to be an annual report aligned on my fiscal quarters, and you can actually update which month does your fiscal year start in so that we're truly reflecting your fiscal quarters. And now this looks exactly like an executive would expect. And so here we're looking at some overall things. How am I doing over time against globally all of my key risks, ransomware, phishing, DDoS, insider threat, et cetera. And I've also got a couple of breakdowns here. How am I doing over ransomware over time and phishing over time? And then from an executive level, I might care about regional breakdowns. What's happening in New York versus Sydney, right? New York's doing a little bit better here. Maybe we want to understand why. And my team probably has a bunch of initiatives that they're tracking. I can now get visibility into what's going on with those initiatives, including thresholds. So we can see here on this modernized infrastructure initiative, we didn't have any deprecated operating systems for quite a while. Then one of our vendors deprecated something. Now we're up over 800 systems running deprecated OSs. And so we need to get back down below that threshold. And so that's the goal here. So you can see how easy it is to visualize what you care about. But let's say that there's something new, a new initiative that you have that you want to start tracking. In a traditional dashboard environment, this is going to involve getting a data analyst involved, getting some Power BI specialist involved, and trying to figure out what to query. Maybe you can't even get historical data for that because you weren't tracking it before. But with Nagomi, it's super easy. So we find a metric that we care about, for example, unmanaged devices. We just drag and drop it over here. Immediately it shows up on the dashboard with historical data according to my metrics for quarterly over the past year, and everything is there and I can track it. And if I want to customize this, it's super easy to do that too. Maybe I want to know the count, not the percentage, and I want it as a trend line over time, and I want to know only for a particular area. Let's look at Sydney. Now we can get that list quickly and easily right in the platform. So super easy to modify these reports. But this is only an executive view. So what do I get if I'm a practitioner in terms of my ability to use this reporting to my advantage? And that's where we can use this other dashboard that I created, which I'm calling a tactical dashboard. So here I'm using the same functionality to build custom dashboards, but I'm able to put different kinds of data in it. So I've got maybe the current topics that my team is concerned with, users that aren't completing their phishing tests, this vulnerability that is out there that I need to squash, and a bunch of devices that don't have EDR, but have known vulnerabilities on them. I want to track that over time. And then maybe I also want a snapshot of what's happening in my environment. How many admins and users do I have? What's my MFA policy coverage? And do I have any registration gaps in terms of tokens? And maybe from a host's perspective, I'm interested in how many deprecated OSs I have out there based on that metric that we were looking at from the executive slide earlier. But maybe I'm also concerned with workstations that are missing one of my tools, right? I don't know which tool, I don't care which tool, but anything that's missing a tool is not properly protected in my book. So here we've got some interesting stuff as well around vulnerabilities. And what's most interesting here in this vulnerability section is this last one, vulnerable deprecated systems. This is actually a custom metric, and this is where the dashboards become incredibly powerful for practitioners, because we can report on more than just a few out-of-the-box things that you can drag and drop from our inventory, but we can report on exactly what you care about. So this particular metric is tracking systems that run a deprecated OS and have vulnerabilities and have no existing endpoint protection in place. And so as a practitioner, if I want to jump from this layer in the dashboard into the data, I can do that. With the little ellipsis here, there's always an Explore More button. So if we use that Explore More button on the deprecated systems metric, what we can see is we're dropped into this asset inventory view where I'm fully in practitioner mode now. I can see the 15 devices that Qualys has identified as having some kind of CVE. We know that none of these devices has CrowdStrike because CrowdStrike hasn't registered them in any way based on hardware serial numbers, MAC addresses, etc. And we know from Qualys that the OS on there is a version that we consider to be deprecated. And you don't have to manage this. We're constantly keeping up to date on what the deprecated OSs are. And so this gives you now a clear working order to say, hey, let's go fix these 15 systems. If I want to dump a list of these systems to a CSV file, I can do that and start to analyze the data and get to patching. And you might think, well, custom metrics sounds complicated. It's not. If I want a new custom metric that just shows deprecated operating systems with a CVE, I can just delete this filter. Immediately, my query grows to show 610 systems. Many of these have EDR on them, as we can see here. And now I could save that as a custom metric, give it a name, and I'm done. I can now go back to dashboards, drag and drop that new metric, and put it exactly where I want it. In fact, you can use any combination of our extensive filters to create any metric that suits you so that you can track the things you care about, whether that's CrowdStrike devices that haven't phoned home in more than 2 weeks, Active Directory accounts that are enabled but haven't logged in a month, whatever metric it is that you care about, you can find that here and you can create it. So we've talked a lot so far about visibility and reporting. How do I show you things from the data that I'm collecting? But beyond seeing things, we're about fixing things. So let's answer the question of how well have I deployed a specific tool in my environment? If I switch to a different demo environment here, we can see that I've got actually quite a few more tools deployed here, almost 20. And one of those tools is Cortex by Palo Alto. So from my tools view, I can dig in and understand how well Cortex is deployed. So in this case, we're showing that 74% of the possible policy configurations that I could deploy are deployed across my assets. I can see some of my biggest gaps, how things are going over time, what's getting better, what's getting worse. And I can see how Cortex is covering my assets specifically. But I can go deeper than that. I can answer some interesting questions. Where did I not fully implement my policy in Cortex? Well, here with top potential utilization gaps, what we're showing you is places where you got 97, 98, 99% of the way there, but you didn't quite get everything, right? There are some assets that are exposed. In this case, 34 assets are missing these two policies, probably because they're in the wrong group, in the wrong OU, or some kind of prioritization situation went wrong inside the policy management console. So Nagomi will actually let me identify which specific assets are failing this test, and it will tell me which policies in Cortex are not working so that I can either update the logic of those policies that are failing or move these assets into a policy that isn't. So we give you the ability to find and close those gaps in policy. But another thing that we let you do at the tool level is see what's new. Because let's be honest, as much as the attackers aren't standing still and your environment is constantly shifting, the tools are also constantly changing. And so here what Nagomi does for you is identify where there are new capabilities in the tool that you could take on to better improve your defenses. And here I can click into any one of these and see what's happening and start to implement in my environment. Finally, from a tool perspective, how can I get better, right? You're showing me how to fix the gaps or where there are like new things that I'm not doing, but what's the most valuable thing I could do if I'm the Cortex admin? Well, that's what the defensive plan is for. We prioritize the top 15 things that you can do today. Your boss cancels your one-on-one. Great. What are you going to work on? You don't have to research what Cortex is able to do. You don't have to start pulling reports to understand what's happening in the tool. You can come to Nagomi and see that enabling UEFI protection, quarantining on Windows is the #1 thing you could change. It impacts 4,500 assets and would improve your overall adoption of the tool by 3%. Boom, easy, done. We'll give you step-by-step instructions on how to do that right in the remediation, and we even let you create a ticket from here if you want to do that. So that's how I answer the question of what do I do next if I'm a Cortex admin. But let's go broader. What do I do next if I don't know what's going on? If I have a broader scope, right? Maybe I'm the CISO and I want to help identify what projects we should take on next. The global defensive plan prioritizes the most high impact changes you can make across every integrated tool in your environment. No tool can give you this because they only have their own narrow scope. Microsoft can tell you what to do in Microsoft. Palo Alto can tell you what to do in Cortex. You know, Prisma, Microsoft Prisma, EPM, whatever. They all have their own context. Here, I can give you step-by-step instructions on how to disable browser persistence inside conditional access, what specific conditional access policies you can change, and I can learn why this is important. This is a high impact change that's going to drive an improvement in my overall score in the environment. So this is the biggest level of how do I prioritize my effort. So a quick review of what we discussed, right? We discussed how to get data into the environment using read-only APIs where we can normalize, correlate, and deduplicate to give you a true view of what are your assets and what are the policies that are protecting them. We talked about how we reduce the manual effort required with pivot tables and VLOOKUPs of getting that data to line up. Nagomi takes care of all that automatically. We showed you how we can reflect that data back in business context around departments and different geographic regions, and how we can use dashboards both at executive and tactical levels to show you what's happening. We even showed you how we can report on tool utilization using the tools view here. But beyond visibility, we talked about how Nagomi helps you drive action, how we help you get more out of the tools you have by finding the policy gaps, finding the coverage gaps, and finding the opportunities and closing those using the defensive plan. KJ, back to you.
Thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you for that amazing insight and sharing how we do all the awesomeness under the hood and in the platform. With that being said, this is the time for folks to submit their Q&A through the Q&A Zoom functionality. But before, as people are submitting their questions, we do have received a couple of them. I do want to remind we have the third webinar in this demo webinar series on July 9th that will focus on tracking the effectiveness of your security controls. Ryan just touched on it briefly, but this webinar will be heavily focused on how do you actually do that. And please do feel free to attend that as well to kind of get a much more comprehensive third view at Nagomi's security control effectiveness tracking capabilities. In the Q&A section, so I'll go ahead and with the first question here is how do you define a good policy and how do you track it? What if I don't agree with your recommendations?
Yeah, so that's actually a really good question. And it comes up a lot with customers, right? You're telling me how much of the tool I've used, but like, what if those things are not valuable to me? We have a security research team here that are all very experienced working in state level cybersecurity, let's say. And what they do is they go through the entire tool in the UI and in the API, and they look at all of the possible options and they try to assess in a clean room, in a perfect environment with no other interference, what are the things that we would recommend turning on for maximum protection? We do have a concept of what we call accepted risk. And so if a policy isn't right for you, either because it would technically interfere with an application on your system, or because the business just wouldn't tolerate it, nobody wants to run around with like YubiKeys to authenticate, or maybe your users can't install Microsoft Authenticator because it's personal phones and you can't enforce that or whatever. The idea is that you mark that as accepted risk in Nagomi. We take away the recommendation, so you're not looking at it anymore, but you're still able to track the impact that that's having on you. So you're not required to do everything that we say to get to 100%, but you are required to at least think about everything we say to understand whether it is relevant or not.
Perfect. The next question I have here is regarding our threat exposure, threat intelligence kind of capabilities. It says, we talked about threat intelligence during the intro and attack mapping, but we didn't really show anything in the demo. How does that kind of come into play?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. We did talk about it a bit. So there, I briefly highlighted how we can report on how you're doing against key risks like ransomware or phishing. And ultimately, that is the threat context to a degree. So we've identified, again, as I mentioned earlier, the techniques that make up a ransomware attack or a phishing attack and showing how well defended you are against those techniques. We can go into, I think, in a future webinar, a little bit more detail. But ultimately, what we do is we allow you to see for any given adversary on a moment's notice, you can just click and see exactly how it all lines up, how your policies line up with the techniques they specifically use. We have a whole attack mapping function that lets you drill into that in detail. So CTI folks love us because the common side quest is like a board member pings the CIO and says, "Hey, I saw recent the one of the moment is like all the breaches in the UK, Marks and Spencer and Harrods on the scattered spider stuff. Are we vulnerable?" And then the CIO goes to the CISO and the CISO goes to the SecOps guy and the CTI guys, and they're like, "Answer this question." And that side quest is honestly a week or two long project to fully map every control and every technique to understand what's going on. Nagomi does it instantaneously, and it's really powerful.
Perfect. And the last question that we have time for today is what are some of one or more metrics or report elements that can consistently deliver the most value to board SecOps personnel or organizations overall?
Whew.
Is there even one, or is it like compilation of a few that can consistently deliver value?
Yeah, I mean, the honest truth is it depends. The one thing that surprised me most since I started at Nagomi is like how different every organization and every board is. We talked to some CISOs and their board is super technical and they have like specifically a cyber subcommittee on the board, and they're asking lots of really deep questions. And then we have other organizations that literally all they need to put up is like the overall threat protection score, and they're good to go. So it really is a wide range. I think what's powerful about us is that we have a range of metrics that can be valuable to a variety of people. But I think consistently the thing about our metrics that's most valuable is the ability to segment by group, we call it, but logically based on like divisions, business units, call it crown jewels, users with high privilege, systems with sensitive data, the ability to kind of report on the data in those kind of subsets is consistently valuable to all kinds of folks, whether it's at a super technical detail level or at a much zoomed out level. It shows that the data is contextualized to the business, which is what matters most.
Perfect. With that being said, I think we are at time. So thank you everyone for taking the time to attend our demo webinar number 2 that focused today on security reporting and how Nagomi helps you connect the dots between mapping security risks to your business risks so that you can make effective business and security decisions. We do, as I mentioned, have a third webinar focusing on security control effectiveness on July 9th. So please register for that. With that being said, thank you so much again, Ryan, for going through the awesome demo. And thank you everyone for registering and attending this webinar. Have a wonderful day and the rest of the week. Thank you.